My stepmother announced she was gifting my dad's lake house to my stepsister and told the whole table that I don't get a say. So I smiled and agreed with her, then stopped paying for the one thing none of them knew I paid for. The phone call in March finished her. I'm 34, female. And I want to start there because that's where it started for everybody else. It started for me about 6 years earlier. Let me back up. My dad's name was Ray. His father built a house on Bitternut Lake in northern Michigan in 1961, mostly out of stubbornness and whatever lumber he could get cheap. And my dad spent every summer of his childhood there, and then every summer of mine. It is not a nice house. The floor slopes toward the lake. The screen door has never once closed on the first try. There's a pantry door frame with pencil marks up the side of it. Every kid who ever spent a summer up there, going back 3 generations. My name in there twice because I lied about my height when I was 11, and my dad made me do it again, honestly. My mom left when I was 7. It was not dramatic, she just wanted a different life, and she went and got one, and my dad and I got very good at being 2 people in a car with the radio on. He married Rosalind when I was 16. She had a daughter, Margot, a year younger than me. I want to be fair here, because it would be easier for this story if Rosalind had been a monster from day one, and she wasn't. She was fine. She made a big deal of my graduation. She learned how I take my coffee. What she never did was think of me as hers. That's not a crime. I'm just telling you the shape of it, because the shape matters later. My dad died 6 years ago. Pancreatic, fast, about 11 weeks from the diagnosis to the funeral. 2 things happened after that which nobody in my family knew about. And I need you to hold on to both of them. The first is that I sat down with his attorney, a woman named Bernice who had known my dad for 30 years and cried in her own conference room. There was paperwork. There was a lot of it. At the end, she said there was one more thing my dad had left with her, and that I didn't need it yet, and she'd hang on to it. I was 28 and hollowed out, and I didn't ask a single follow-up question. Remember that. It comes back. The second thing is that I started paying for the lake house, not because anyone asked me to. Because in February of that first year, a tax bill showed up forwarded to my apartment and I paid it, and then the insurance renewal came, and I paid that too. And somewhere in there, it just became a thing I did. Property taxes. Homeowner's insurance, which is not cheap on an old place near water. Propane, which that house eats like it's got a personal grudge. Hollis, who plowed the driveway and pulled the docks every fall and had been doing it since my dad was a teenager. A new roof after the hail in year 3. A new septic field in year 5, which is $9,000 you get absolutely nothing fun for. Rosalind assumed all of that came out of the estate. She said it that way. The estate. Like there was a vault somewhere. I never corrected her. My dad had asked me in the hospital, with that voice he had at the end, to keep the door open for them. So I kept the door open and I kept my mouth shut and I paid the bills. My dad was a man who kept receipts. Shoebox in the hall closet, everything in it. Argued with a contractor once in 1998 and won because of a napkin. He taught me to do the same. Keep that in your back pocket. Now. The years in between. Rosalind started calling it her house. Small at first. We're opening the house next weekend. Then I'm having the girls up. Then at a barbecue, introducing me to a neighbor as Ray's daughter, which is technically accurate and still landed like a slap. The summer before last, she renovated. Gray paint, new light fixtures, a sign in the entryway that said Lake Life in cursive. And she took out the pantry door frame, the one with the pencil marks. I drove up in August and it was gone, replaced with clean white trim, and when I asked, she said, "Oh, that old thing was falling apart, it looked awful." I said it was fine and went and sat on the dock for a while. I want you to understand what that does to someone. Not the anger. The other thing, where you start editing yourself down smaller and smaller so you can keep being invited. By last summer, I was asking permission to come to my own house. She'd say things like, "Let me check what weekends we've got free." I'd say sure. Every time she moved a line, I moved with it. Because my dad asked me to keep the door open, and I am apparently the kind of person who does what her dead father asked her to do for 6 straight years. Then the 4th of July, big one. Rosalind's whole side, some neighbors, Margot's fiancé Corbin, and both his parents. Ribs, corn, the flag towels. She stood up and clinked a glass and announced that she and Margot had made a decision, and that the lake house was going to be Margot and Corbin's wedding present, and that the wedding itself would be there next June. Right on the lawn. Applause. Corbin's mother actually teared up, and I said, in a completely normal voice, "Has anyone talked to Bernice about that?" That was it. That was the entire thing I said. Rosalind put her glass down. She gave the table this look, the one you give when you're about to be funny at somebody's expense, and she said, "Simone, honey, you're Ray's daughter. You're not mine, and this is family property, and you don't get a say in what happens to it." They laughed. Not all of them. But enough of them. That warm ripple of laughter that means everybody agrees you've been put back where you belong. Margot laughed. Corbin's mother laughed with her hand on her chest like it was a bit from a sitcom. I sat there holding a paper plate with 3 ribs on it, and I felt something in my chest go very quiet and very still. I smiled at her. Big, friendly, completely empty. You know what? I said. You're absolutely right. My mistake. She patted my shoulder on her way past me to get more ice. Here's the part they didn't know. Here's what I'd been sitting on the whole time. The house was never Rosalind's. It was never family property, in the way she meant it. My dad put it into a trust 9 weeks before he died, and I am the sole beneficiary and the trustee, and my name has been on the deed as trustee for 6 years. Bernice filed it herself. It was never a secret exactly. It just never occurred to a single one of them to check, because it never occurred to them that I was anything other than a guest. So I drove home that Sunday, and I did not do anything petty. I want to be clear about that, because petty was available, and I had a 4-hour drive to think about it. I just stopped. Monday morning, I opened my banking app, and I killed the autopays one at a time. Propane, Hollis, the dock service, the cleaning company Rosalind had started booking before every holiday and charging to the card she thought belonged to the estate, the boat storage in Petoskey, the internet, which apparently mattered a lot to Margot. I kept the insurance and I kept the taxes because I'm not going to burn down my own house to make a point. I also called Hollis and asked him to drain the plumbing before winter and bill me for that one job personally, because the house is mine and I love it and it did nothing wrong. Then I called him back with one instruction. I said, if anybody up there asks you why you're not coming around anymore, don't lie for me, and don't explain anything either. Just tell them the person who was paying you stopped paying you. Hollis, who is 71 and does not care for Rosalind even slightly, said that sounded like a fine arrangement, and then I waited. The first crack was Labor Day. The propane tank had been coasting on what was in it, and it ran out on a Saturday, which meant no hot water and no stove for 9 people. Rosalind called the propane company and they told her the account was closed. She called me, annoyed, and asked what was going on with the estate, and I said, and I want you to picture me saying this while folding laundry. Oh, I really wouldn't know. I don't get a say in that stuff. She hung up on me. I folded a fitted sheet badly and felt fantastic. October, nobody pulled the docks. Nobody had ever thought about the docks in their lives because Hollis had been pulling them out every year since the Nixon administration. The ice took 2 sections and bent a third. Thanksgiving, no plowing, and Corbin's little SUV got stuck at the bottom of the hill, and they carried the turkey up on foot in the dark. Margot posted about it. Roughing it at the lake. 11 likes. By February, the family group chat had a running theory that my dad's estate had been mismanaged, that some lawyer had bled it dry, that they should look into it. Aunt Delia sent a link about elder fraud. Nobody asked me anything because I don't get a say. Then March. Rosalind wanted the gift done properly before the June wedding, so she got a real estate attorney to put the house in Margot and Corbin's names. Deed transfer. Simple in theory. She told him the house was hers free and clear, and he had no reason not to believe her, so nobody actually ran anything until the title company in Traverse City did the search. I was at work when my phone rang with a number I didn't know. A very polite woman asked if she was speaking with Simone, and could I confirm my relationship to a property on Bitternut Lake? I said I could. She said she had a request in front of her to transfer the property, and that she was calling because the trustee on record hadn't signed anything, and was I aware of the transaction? There was a pause. I let it sit. I said no. I was not aware of it, and I would not be signing anything. I asked her one more question, which was whether she'd be informing the party who submitted the request. She said she would that afternoon. I said thank you very much, and I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while with my hands on the wheel, feeling absolutely nothing, and then feeling all of it. My phone started ringing at 4:40. I didn't pick up. Rosalind left 4 voicemails, escalating in a way that was honestly impressive as a piece of theater. The first one was confused. The second one had, there's clearly been some kind of mistake in it. By the 4th, she had arrived at the word stolen. Then the group chat exploded. I had manipulated a dying man. I had gone behind everybody's back. I had waited 6 years to ambush my grieving stepmother, which I'll admit is a good line. And I might have appreciated it more if it hadn't been about me. Aunt Delia asked me directly, in the chat, in front of everyone, how I could do this to family. Here's where my dad's shoebox comes in. I had 6 years of receipts. Every bill, every transfer, every invoice from Hollis with his terrible handwriting scanned in. I put it all in one file in date order, with a total at the bottom, and I sent it to the group chat with no message attached at all. $94,216. Taxes, insurance, propane, plowing, docks, the roof, the septic field. The water heater in year 2, the deck boards in year 4. Every dollar of it out of my checking account. Not $1 of it out of the estate, a thing which had stopped existing. About 8 weeks after the funeral, the chat went quiet for 11 hours. 11. I checked. The first person to say anything was Corbin, of all people, who said, "I didn't know any of this." And then a minute later, "I'm sorry, Simone." Rosalind's response came the next morning, and it was a masterpiece of not addressing anything. She said money doesn't make someone family. Which, sure, that's true. It's just a strange thing to say to the person who paid for the roof over your Thanksgiving. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from her attorney claiming undue influence. That my father was medicated, that he wasn't in his right mind in those last weeks, that the trust should be set aside. So I called Bernice, and Bernice said, "I've been waiting 6 years for you to need this. The one more thing. The thing I didn't need yet. The day my dad signed the trust, Bernice had him record a video. She does it for every client who thinks their family might fight about something later. It's 11 minutes long. My dad is sitting in her conference room in the blue fleece he wore constantly, thin in the face, and he explains, slowly and clearly, and with Bernice asking him to state the date and confirm his medications, exactly what he was doing and why. He said Rosalind was getting the retirement accounts, the townhouse, and the life insurance, which was the money he had made. He said the lake house was not money he had made. He said Rosalind gets what I built. Simone gets what my father built. He said he'd talked to Rosalind about it twice, and she hadn't wanted to discuss it, and he'd written her a letter instead, which Bernice also had a copy of. Signed by Rosalind. Dated. And near the end, he looked right at the camera and said he hoped his girls would keep going up there together. All of them. Every summer. And that he wanted the door kept open. And then he said one more thing. But if they ever make you feel like a guest in it, kiddo, you have my blessing to stop being one. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time after that. Bernice sent the video and the signed letter to Rosalind's attorney. We never heard from him again. Update, because there's one more piece, and it's not the one you're expecting. In April, Margot showed up at my apartment. Not the group chat, not a text. In person on a Tuesday, with her hands in her sleeves like she was 15. Again. She apologized for the 4th of July. She said she'd laughed because everybody was laughing and she'd felt sick about it in the car on the way home and had never said so, which I believe, because that is extremely Margot. Then she got to the actual reason she was there and asked if the wedding could still be at the lake house in June. I told her yes. 2 conditions. The invitation to me comes from her, not her mother. And her mother hears the answer from me, in a phone call, where she has to ask, Rosalind made that call. It took her 9 days, and it lasted about 4 minutes, and she got the words out. I said yes, and I said I'd have Hollis put the docs back in, and I hung up before either of us could ruin it. The wedding was on the lawn on June 14th. It rained for 20 minutes, and then it didn't. Rosalind was polite to me all day in a careful, exhausted way, and I was polite back, and neither of us pretended it was more than that. Hollis came for the reception in a tie. And he told me, offhand, like it was nothing, that when Rosalind renovated, he'd pulled the pantry door frame out of the dumpster and stood it up in the back of his pole barn. Because it had his own name on it from 1968, it went back up the week after the wedding. Same wall, same screws, slightly crooked now. My name's in there twice. The lie and the truth. There'll be a fresh mark on it in a few years, because Margot's pregnant and she asked me first.